Afternoon, everyone. So, this is Gav from In2Events, and I'm Rich from an agency called 50 Blue. Today we're going to demonstrate the importance of having a solid marketing strategy and plan as the foundations for growing a successful business. I'll give a brief summary of how I fell into the world of marketing and demonstrate some of the misconceptions that the discipline suffers from. And Gav will give you an insight into the world of In2Events, some of the highs and lows, and tell you the story from its early conception to the success it is today. So, where did I begin? There I am. Way back when, way back when I was a little less grey, I was happily whiling away my time at university, studying for a degree in illustration and animation. I think at this point, I definitely was more interested in a career working for Disney than I was marketing. But that was until I started a part-time job to fund my university studies. During that part-time role, I started to think about how I could use my creative background to increase sales in the shop that I worked in. They were a national brand at the time, still are. They had a high street presence across the UK with huge advertising budgets, but what difference was that really making to our little shop? So I started designing flyers and door drops for my local area just to drive footfall. We did obviously make sure we checked in with the brand police first. And it was at this point, I guess, that my interest was really sparked. I could use my creative background to start influencing people's behaviours. My first opportunity in marketing materialised, and I jumped at the chance to get into the industry properly. So I took a role as a creative media exec at the time, working with creative media channels, so TV, radio, press, digital. Took the time to learn what all these different channels meant and how they worked and what the difference between them was. We also started to consider why we were doing these things, how to track them effectively so if they worked we could do it again. And we also started to understand that marketing was actually quite a powerful tool. Around about this time as well, I started working with a marketing director who gave me an insight into strategy, and I could really start to then understand the influence that marketing had on a business. But how did other people view marketing? I've since learned that most people's impressions of marketing are the following. You get a website, you get a nice logo, you create some brand. Some of you in the room may consider marketing or marketeers as the creative guys. An MD that I used to work for referred to us as the colouring in department. That wasn't me. Not that MD, no. That boss back in the early days referred to a pitch I was delivering on how he was going to bring to market a new service as wishy-washy nonsense. Great. So I'd just put in all this effort researching his competition, analysing the marketplace for him, proposing who his target audience were and how we were going to reach him effectively, just to be told that it was just wishy-washy. I guess I'll go back to colouring in. I did start to wonder though, is this really what people think about marketing in general, or was it just a few? So we'll see with Gav's story how that panned out.
So, this is me. This is where it all started, but it wasn't quite this early. So it was actually, I'm going to talk to you about the story of In2Events, where it's been, what's happening now and where it's going. And this is, the next slide is a little bit more relevant. So it actually started when I was at college, and that's not Al Murray, that's me. So my friend there, Adam, and I, we started to organise nightclubs events for colleges. And I was the promoter, and Adam was the DJ. So we had the sales and the operations function sorted quite early on. And the events became so popular across the South Coast whilst we were at college that actually I decided to quit my big job at the time as trolley boy at Safeways. And the events became even more frequent, and we were getting asked by other colleges to put on the nights because they were so successful. And I decided that I couldn't carry on working in the evenings and running the nightclub promotions as well as sticking out my time whilst I was at college. So I decided to quit college and follow my dream. So I went to my business lecturer at the time and I said, I need to leave. And he said, well, before you do that, there is an opportunity for you at a local events agency, which sounds a bit like your cup of tea. So I managed to stick college out. So I went through the interview, which was very successful. And a long story short, I got the job, and I was then in the events industry. And the seed was planted. So I had a proper job in the events industry, however proper that is. And my first project was to take and manage 200 insurance sales people down to Cape Town. And I remember going down to Cape Town and thinking, actually, how can life get any better than this? So I was 17 years old, I was in Cape Town, and I was working, and even though I was working, I was surrounded by luxury. I was luxury travel, luxury hotels, luxury food, and so on. And I remember thinking to myself at that point, why would I ever want to do anything else? So during that first event, I learned a lot. I learned about the importance of customer service. I learned firsthand the power of events, what it means to people, what it means to companies. And before going on that flight at 17 years old, I never really understood why companies would spend so much money on taking their employees away. At 17, you wouldn't, right? So whilst they were away and looking at the guest faces and how happy they were and having the conversations with them about how hard those people worked for that year to get on that trip, it wasn't just for them, it wasn't for the company, it was for their families, it was to achieve, it was to build better futures for everybody. And it gave me a chance to understand why companies did these things, why agencies were important, to understand why how the financials work with companies and also the agency side. Everything made sense to me within those 2 days of that program. So I came back from that event, buzzing, as you can imagine at 17, whilst all my friends weren't really in a proper job. And I came back and I had the bug. I had the business bug. So I sat down and I remember having that interview, the probation interview with my first boss. And he said to me at 17, coming in, how do you feel it's gone? What's next? So I told him, I want to run your business. That also isn't me. So at the age of 17, he told me, this is never going to happen. It's a family business. So my plans for world domination were ruined. So I cooled down, I had a 20-minute drive home, I had a cool down, and I had a conversation with my father, and I realised that it probably wasn't the end of my world. I had to take advantage of it and make the most of what was in front of me. So I did. So I stayed at the business, and I learned from a number one. There's a very youthful Gavin with her. And I made the most of it. And we stayed there, and I learned. I decided that I was going to absorb everything I could to learn from the number one, number two, who we're looking to employ now, which is very good, and make it a bit more of a strategic long play.
I think it's a good point that Gav makes there as well. In those early days, he got an insight into what understanding an audience was about and what drives them, and I think that's invaluable. In business, it is critical to set apart what drives your audience and how this supports what your clients need. It isn't always about trying to sell them everything that you have in your toolbox.
So let's fast forward a few years. And you remember me talking about my good friend Adam, my college mate. We decided over a conversation that we both needed to change. And after working for a few different businesses and getting paid quite well, very well, getting paid and having a company car, a huge expense account and so on, and travelling the world for free, I decided to put everything else on the line again and quit, which was quite a big decision for a 25-year-old at the time, but I decided I was going to go off and do it myself. But Adam and I both agreed, and we were talking about it, that we were really both into events. And we needed to come up with a name for something that we were both really into. And so it was formed. It's a really creative name. Rich wasn't involved at this point. So wasn't there. So we had obviously been off and been in different businesses, and we decided actually that it was really important. We knew what we had to do was to get the foundations down early in order for a business to succeed. which is exactly what we did. So we got ourselves an office, we got ourselves an accountant, we invested in laptops, which were slightly bigger than this at the time, and we had everything we needed to do to get the business off of the ground. We even invested in our own CRM system. So we were set. This is true. This is a true story. So this is set. The only thing we didn't have was an essential ingredient to start a business, which were customers, which is important. So we decided we knew what we were doing in marketing, and we decided we knew how we were going to go and get business. So we got ourselves a website, we got ourselves some business cards, and we signed up to this guaranteed deal site. Money back, £20 a lead it was going to cost us for all these multi-million-pound companies to come in and give us all of their work. So we just sat there and we waited. And we waited, and we waited some more, and it didn't work.
I think, again, another important point that Gav made there is at that early point in his business career, he was considering marketing to just be about that website or just be about a logo. He was obviously trying to do a bit of lead generation at the same time. I guess in a way he is kind of right, but marketing isn't just about those things. It is about your image though, and that is important. I think there was a talk earlier, or there might be later on, about brand, and brand really is important for your business. It defines you and it defines what your business represents. Think carefully when you're creating your brand, what that image is and how it's being portrayed, and then deliver that message consistently across all your platforms and all your campaigns.
So we had a website, we did have our business cards, and we actually had a nice logo, which we thought we did at the time, and then Rich came along and ruined it all. But we did, the paid sites did end up leading to one of our biggest ever clients. And it did involve donuts, but I'll finish that story in a minute. But so obviously we were still sat there, and with a severe lack of these businesses that are come in and give us multi-million-pound deals for £20, Adam and I decided that we needed to do some selling. So we hit the phones for 5 hours a day via the Yellow Pages, our CRM, and we sent God knows, hi, we're In2Events, we're amazing, can you work with us sort of type emails, and we finally drummed up some business. There's the business being drummed. So that's right. So it was going well. We were on the up, and we were finding ourselves doing everything. And I don't know if there are any business owners in here, individual business owners, or looking to start up and so on, right? So you find yourselves doing everything, yeah? So you're the operations team, you're a sales team, you're the marketing team, you're the HR department, you're the cleaners, you're the whatever, you're everything. So there's no different than Ad and I. And someone once said to me, a mentor of mine said to me, he said, Gavin, you've got to realise what effectively you're doing is you're riding a bike, but you're riding a bike, and actually what you're doing is you're riding a bike at the gym versus riding a bike on the road, which is you're putting in the same effort, but you're getting completely different results. And that was something that I sort of keep with me. And I know that feeling because having been there, so I feel quite comfortable talking about it with you guys who are starting a business or looking into business, because I've shared through the years, I've gone from highs and lows and experienced everything else in between. And they do say, and this is another thing that people do say, is that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And we got lucky. So one day we were in the business and we were sat there and we were still sending these emails and we were going through our CRMs and thinking we were really important and so on. And we got a phone call and it was from a client, an old client of mine who then realised I'd left and come on board, realised I had In2Events and so on, phoned me up and said, hi, we're looking to run a new event. Would you be interested? So I said, absolutely not. Not interested, thank you very much. So I said, I was joking, that was a joke, you can laugh. so I said, yes, please. Thanks. So I said, yes, please, yes, that would be amazing. So this event was for an IT company, and it was a huge event in Spain. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a big project, and within a month, we had to employ loads of staff. So we recruited. We bought more laptops, we bought bigger offices, we bought everything bigger and bigger and bigger, and we invested and we invested and invested, and it was going really well. And the other thing I did was we bought a boat. There we are with our little boat to say thank you. And to say, so we said, so we bought a rib just as a little plaything, right? So it was fantastic, cost thousands of pounds, was completely the best and worst decision I've ever made in my life. So we were celebrating, it was all going well, and we not only did the event in Spain, we did loads of others, and we were traveling the world, and everything was on the up, which was fantastic. But then disaster struck. Not the boat. I sold the boat. That's another story. I nearly died. So we were riding high, and we were feeling the best of the best. And this happens in business. You go through highs and you go through lows. And we were feeling untouchable. And I had another phone call from the same client, but it wasn't as quite jolly as the phone call I received before. And it said, Gavin, we need you to come to the office. There's been a few changes that are happening, and we want to talk about them with you. So I went into that meeting, and I was driving up, and I had all these things going through my head about what this meeting could be. And the conversation went along these lines, and this may sound familiar. It said, Gavin, as you know, there's been a few changes on a European level, and we've decided to restructure the way in which we run events, and we're putting them in-house across our European marketing team. So I remember that feeling. And I've been told not to swear, so I can't, but that's how I felt. So I remember the feeling, which was emptiness. I remember the feeling that I was a failure. I remember feeling that the world was coming to an end at that point for something that I'd built and invested all that time in, and I had a boat, and it was all coming to an end. And that was the lowest point I'd ever felt. And I remember driving back thinking I'm going to have to tell that team that we were employing that they're going to have to be let go. And I remember also thinking about how I was going to explain to my wife, who was pregnant with our first baby, how we may not be able to keep the roof over our heads. It wasn't a good time, and In2Events were 2 months away from being not really into anything. So we went from flying high to flying nowhere. We'd put all of our eggs and what we were doing and how we were building the business into one basket. So what do you do? And I don't know if this is ringing home to anyone, but what do you do? Do you stop? Do you start again? Do you quit? Do you fold? Do you go and work for somebody? Because it's quite tempting at that point to go and get a job and be safe again. So no. So what we did, instead of really panicking, is we looked at what we were doing. What were we doing as a business? We went back to the basics. We looked at the practices and we analysed what we had been missing. So did we have good financial practices in? Yes, we did. Did we have robust processes? Yes. Did we have talented people and a great product that we were really proud in? Yes. What we didn't realise, and what we maybe missed, was that marketing function. We'd fallen into the trap, which what happens in businesses when you're looking to start. We'd fallen into the trap of just delivering, being busy, not looking about how the outside world was affecting us as a business. What was going on? How were we creating more opportunities? We fell into the trap and it came back to bite us. And I'm pretty sure, and we've had a few conversations outside, that I'm not unique in this. This is happening to new businesses every single day. It's happening to people all around, even in successful businesses. This is happening. I know this is a sweeping statement, but I don't know if any of this is making sense, but you could start to think, you have a lead contact within a business who has built your business or has got it to where you be. How close are they away from leaving? How close are you to having that phone call from a marketing or a company who's streamlining their solutions into Europe, and actually it's nothing, it's things outside of your control that you can't, it's just what happens. So it's probably some of you are thinking about this now. And it's not anything to worry about necessarily. The question is to start to worry about how and what you're going to do about it.
So I think Gav touched on it there about how, as a new business, you end up doing a lot yourself. And actually, something that happens quite common, actually, is sales and marketing are treated as one discipline, and in fact, they are completely different channels. They do, however, need to be aligned. And I think that's important. Someone once told me, they used an analogy of a marriage. Marketing is the relationship part, the building up. You've got to learn to trust each other, talk the same language as each other, know each other a little bit. But sales are the guy that's going to do the proposal. But the sales part doesn't happen without building that trust first. Okay. So we've given you a bit of a backstory. When did we join together and I started working at In2Events? It was actually through a chance encounter, through a mutual friend. In2Events were making some waves in the industry. as Gav's already illustrated, but I think they were struggling to get their heads at the time around what marketing really was. An opportunity, I thought, to make a difference in a young business. So, a few hours later, a beer or two.
10, 20.
And a plan probably drawn up on the back of a fag packet, and the penny dropped for both of us. I was what Gavin was looking for and needed in his business, and Gav was someone that I needed, someone that was going to give proper marketing a chance.
Proper marketing.
Proper
marketing.
Portsmouth.
Yeah,
Portsmouth slang.
Exactly. So it's a really good point that Rich does make there. It's all about where you guys are, or where we are, and about networking. And one of the reasons why we supported the organisers and Amanda and Amy and everything today is actually to always take those opportunities, is to communicate, build that network. I mean, you guys here, I don't know where you're from or what you do, but competitors, partners, suppliers, whatever, I can guarantee that in the room, if we all started to have a conversation, there'd be something from a business point of view where we could all add value to each other, and that's the importance. And actually, without having conversations with my peers, I wouldn't have been introduced to Rich, and we wouldn't be stood here today.
Cheers, Gav. So, my career at In2Events began, and the focus back at this time was new business. Lead generation was the clear objective, but we did have to have a look at the business as a whole and strip things back to basics. We revisited the company's objectives as a whole. We took a look at what marketing channels they'd been using at the time, what was still relevant and what was effective and what wasn't. We took a look at how we were going to reach our customers effectively and efficiently, and we started to track where all of this business was coming from so that we could repeat and measure the success of the activity that we'd implemented. Some of you may know this rule, Paretos Rule, or the 80-20 rule in business. Typically, a business gains 80% of its profits from the top 20% of its client base. And usually, that top 20% is only receiving 20% of the time and resource in your business. So the other 80% is only spent on trying to achieve 20% of your profit. I hope that all kind of makes sense. Probably said 80-20 about 50 times then. So we took a look at this and we decided to flip it. Wouldn't it make more sense to spend 80% of our time and resource getting more from this already loyal 20% client base, and then utilise the rest of our time to bring in new business, to diversify the client base, to avoid the golden egg happening again? So I talked about the colouring in department, and yes, marketing is creative, and there is a need for the colouring pens at some point, as long as you can clarify when you need to use them. I think there's an old saying that marketing, when they've got nothing else to do, they just redevelop a website or change the logo.
What do we do?
It's when we've run out of ideas. But like many businesses, when they start out, and as Gav's already portrayed, you are kind of a one-man band. Especially in the events industry, there's so many different aspects to an event. You've got the management side, AV, catering, venue sourcing, the list is endless. In2Events at that point were no different than any other event agency. Their offering was confusing. Their website wasn't particularly simple to navigate, or people really knew what it was that they offered. And I guess in reality, what we were doing is shouting about lots of things, and it was just getting lost in noise. We were trying to offer as many services as possible to entice people in, which is what you do, right? Yeah? So think about it in this context, and we like a bit of analogies. What do you do at home if you get a leak in your bathroom? What would you do? You'd probably call a plumber. Be no point phoning out your gardener or the electrician, because they wouldn't know what they were doing. And I think that's kind of rings true in when you're offering your service, position yourself as an expert, not a jack of all trades. Clarify your services, whether you're an event supplier, an organiser or a venue. Understand where your position in the market is. Think about what it is you're offering and consider how is it relevant to your customers' needs. But even more of this, think about how best to tell your customer about your service. What medium do they use to research? How do they communicate? What do they want to hear? How do they want to hear it? Oh, moved too soon. How, for example, if you're a corporate, think about how you integrate your messaging across your employee base. You can build brand advocates from within. Hopefully, they're your most loyal brand advocates. Integrate the same message across your sales channel and also your customer base to create that brand consistency I was talking about earlier, and make sure you provide relevant content to each of those different segments. If you're an event supplier, perhaps a venue or a DMC, consider what agencies need from you, if that's a channel that you go after. Rather than just talking about statistics and selling them what your venue or what you have to offer, think about the most relevant way to communicate this. Is it always really a case of travelling down to an agency's office, spending an hour with the team to just present to them some slides that we can read on your website? So just consider that the next time you're going to present to another agency. And if you are an agency, think about how you add value to your clients. Marketing isn't always just about self-promotion. Every agency in the world is going to say what awards they've won and what fantastic work they've done, because they wouldn't be in business if they weren't doing that. We all need to think beyond that. So I skipped ahead, but there we go. With all this in mind, we did build a new website, and we did create some consistent branding for In2Events, and we created lots of lovely marketing material. But this time, and most importantly, we knew why. We had researched and researched some more. We'd asked the right questions, and now we were listening to our customers and our prospects. Then we used that intelligence that we'd gathered to help build our strategy, which then started to shape our marketing activity plan. Not only were we aligning the services and the communications that we were sending out for the business, but we also started to use the intelligence that we gained to start helping form the business strategy. You know, when did we need to recruit new staff? What was the overall structure going to look like?
Does everyone know this guy? I've done this and people have gone, who's that? Half our team were like, who is this guy? So this is like everything is rosy again, and the business was growing. We had a new website, and we're creating more opportunities, and Rich was creating more opportunities, and things were coming into the business, and we had more work than we ever had before, which was fantastic. So we were back out. In2Events was back online, and we started to travel the world again. The orders were getting bigger, the offering was changing, and we were evolving all the time, and absolutely I was back from being lowest of low to loving life. And then due to that growth, we had to react. So we had to react, and it was all a little bit unplanned, but it was a little bit exciting. So staff were coming into the business, and did we listen to Rich and his strategic recruitment strategy about how it was going to benefit us for the short, the medium and long term of the business? No, not at all. We became so overwhelmed with the business that we were getting in, and we got all really excited by it, that actually I failed to maybe see again the difference that Rich was making. It sounds like a love story.
It was a love story.
It was a love story. But we still didn't quite get what Rich was doing. And we didn't really think about how the long-term staffing and the planning that we had was going to actually benefit us. So marketing had done its job for us as a business. We had created more leads, and we were getting more and more inbound. We were diversifying. We had a great website. It was feeding us leads, and things were just about to get better, right? Or not?
Yeah, that love story takes a twist. Sadly, for Gavin anyway, the business had started to move forward, and like he said, were reactive at the time. They'd stopped kind of listening to the strategy that I'd put together, and at the time another company dangled a carrot and I was enticed away.
It's a cliffhanger, it's a cliffhanger. So back to those donuts. You remember me telling you earlier on about those £20 deals that actually was all about donuts? Well, this is the conclusion of that. And business was going really well. Richard just handed his notice in, but so what? Sounds harsh, but so what? What was I going to do? Have to think about who was going to update the website or populate and put pictures on our Facebook group and so on and so forth. This is how I sort of viewed it at the time. And actually we were too busy because we were getting so many leads into the business from the success of marketing that I didn't really need to worry about what was going on in marketing, right? So these donuts, this came from one of the guaranteed sites that many years ago that cost us £20. I stayed in contact with one of the clients at the time, who actually we did end up speaking to, and jumped around many sort of different businesses and different roles and people, and I kept taking donuts to these meetings and sitting there and telling them how great we were. And actually one day we did get a call from one of the contacts who had moved into a business called Google. And the call went something like this. Hi Gavin, how are you? Really well, thanks. Have you ever organised an event in Asia? Absolutely. Loads. Never. Well, we're looking to run this really big event in 6 months' time, and we want you to join us to help make history. Are you interested? And I'd learned from the previous joke that I won't do that. So I said, yes, absolutely, let's do it. So that was it. So I was into Google land. And I don't know if any of you guys are around AI or anything like this, but this was a big event that happened, and In2Events ran it. And I was then invested into this full-time. I had to build a team, put them into London, and I was living in London for 4 days a week, and I wasn't really worrying about anything else because Adam, who's my business partner, who is the brains in the operation, had his finger on the pulse there. My FD was looking after all the financials, and even though sales was my remit, I was about to go and do a big event in South Korea for Google, so why did I need to worry about it? So the event came around, and we went off to Seoul, South Korea. We took over the Four Seasons Hotel for a month, so I don't know if you know, that's quite a pricey property. So it gives you a bit of an idea of this budget, and this was going to be the biggest event that In2Events had ever run, the biggest event personally I'd ever been involved with, the pinnacle of my career from working in events, and I was loving life again. So I packed my bags, and off I went, sat in business class, paid for by Google, which was fantastic. I sat there on a plane, and then I remember the feeling of going from here to here. I was in a bit of a panic. And I started to think, actually, what's happening here is it's happening again. And you've got to learn from these experiences, right? It was happening again. And I was so focused on the business that we had, or I was going off to, actually what I didn't realise is I completely forgot for that previous year that I hadn't replaced any sort of marketing function within the business, which had got us to this point to begin with. I was a bit caught up on this dream. And I think this is quite easy to do when you're in business and you get a big deal. And this is one of the things. I didn't believe, and I got caught up in believing that the success, that any marketing efforts that Rich had made was just going to keep rolling in. And we know that doesn't happen. And this sounds mental, but I was sat on that plane and I was just about to receive quite a big fee for the business. And I was just going to have lunch with Sergey Brin and meet Eric Schmidt and so on and so forth and deliver an event that was going to be seen by over 200 million people globally. I was actually in a moment of this is not great. The reality was kicking in, and even though how much money I was going to make, it was for a month. So I come back, and then what? So what's going to happen in my head? I was thinking, what's going to happen after this event? We'd been there before of nearly losing everything. And it wasn't quite that dramatic, but I remember that feeling. And admittedly, we did have other clients that marketing had brought on board, and we did have like a wider scope of clients. But actually, what if Google, who we'd built a lot on, decided when we came back, didn't want to work with us anymore? To be honest, the extent of the success of In2Events and the growth plans for the next 2 years were based on Google using In2Events. So it's quite a long flight, South Korea. Has anyone been to South Korea? It's quite a long flight. Got hit by lightning 3 times. It's quite a long flight. And I remember sitting on that plane and thinking about all of this. And I'd moved to London, I'd relocated the office, I'd put a team in, hadn't seen my family for a few months properly. And I remember that first message back when I landed was to Rich.
That love story again.
The love story. And I said, and I've been told not to swear on this, so I'll abbreviate the text message, but it was like, hey Rich, how's corporate land? I know it, but come and work back for In2Events, and can we make the magic happen again? So that was it. That's all I had to work out how to do marketing, Rich. I've got loads more people now. So we sat there.
Other people are available.
Yeah, and I remember it was quite a restricted play, but that's all I had. So I sort of was sitting there thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, I now got to find somebody who understands what I want without actually saying it. I've got to understand, well, someone who loves me and hates me at the same time, and basically start dating all over again, which I haven't really got the time, patience, or money to do. So I then got a bit impatient because Rich didn't text me back. And I sort of started to think, well, what's happening here, what's happening here? And then actually I got a text message, and it said, I think it said at the time, all right, mate, good to hear from you. I've jacked in that corporate world, and I'm going off on my own. So that meant one of two things. It meant either I can put him off doing that and then bring him back into In2Events, or In2Events could be a client and support Rich in what he was doing next. So the Event South career went really well, made quite a lot of money for the business, which was fantastic, and came back and it was the best event ever, and the rest is history. So when we met with Rich, and like in the first place, we had a few pints, and that's where 50 Blue was born, which ties us in nicely to where we are now. And I was right, because Google did then leave us as a client.
So, I'm back now. The love story concludes. Not quite where I was before though. Now, as 50 Blue with Gavin and In2Events as one of my biggest clients. So a little bit of background into 50 Blue. We're a strategic brand and marketing agency, and we work with businesses, maybe like some of yours, to build and implement marketing strategies and activity that align with your overall goals. Gav touched on it before. Marketing isn't something you can switch on and off as you please. Fortunately, it doesn't work like that, especially in this industry and especially in B2B. All the hard work that we'd put in previously in building In2Events had ground to a halt, and you can't just pick that stuff back up overnight and expect instant success. So what next for In2Events? We're not just going to do what we did before because they're a different agency now, and we're not going to carry on doing what we did because we're just going to get the same results, and that's not what Gav wants. So we go back to the drawing board, but not completely. As we said, his business is built now, it's successful, but we do need to understand how we can extend that success and make him grow. So is it time to get the colouring pens out? No. No, we're not the colouring in department anymore. So the industry is evolving, we all know that. In2Events is evolving. So In2Events must evolve with the industry. So it's back to doing more research, putting more focus into what Gav's customers are looking for and want. We provided him with a detailed SWOT analysis, identifying threats and opportunities for his business, as well as looking at what his competition are up to. I think it's, again, another really important point is to always make sure you understand what your competition are doing. You are going to be the ones that need to stay ahead of the game. You don't want to get left behind as people are moving forward. There's been some talks as well today, but we identified that Gav needed to adopt a digital and social strategy. It was now imperative to his overall marketing plan and the future growth of the business. So we brought in a new CRM platform.
Wasn't the Yellow Pages?
Wasn't the Yellow Pages, no. It was a fully automated sales and marketing tool. So we can now run automated nurture campaigns, so we can start moving prospects down that sales funnel from the top to the bottom. We also developed a social strategy, and we gave Gav's staff the chance on the ground to have access to the company profiles so that they could start sharing where they were. We're an events business and they're about all around the world all the time. There's no point in having someone sitting in the office trying to manage social media when the guys and girls are out and they're there. They can share that experience to the world. I think, again, we'll go back to an analogy. Strawberry fields. This is something that I picked up from a conference. When you think about a strawberry field, you've got three different types of strawberries. You've got ripe ones, ones that are a little bit early, and you've got rotten ones. We kind of use that analogy in the sense of customers and prospects. For all the activity that we've done, and now that we're tracking it and we know exactly where people are, we know when a prospect or a customer is ripe, when they're ready to be picked. We also know, and we can identify, the unripe ones. They're in the top of the funnel. I don't know where that's buzzing from. It's not very nice though, is it? They're at the top of the funnel. They're not quite ready to convert yet, but we can nurture them down, and at one point they will be ready to convert. And then there's the rotten ones. they're not even in the funnel, they're not worth worrying about because they're never going to be customers anyway.
This is a great point, just quick. I know we've only got a few minutes left, so we're going to be quick. So this is a great example of actually working with 50 Blue, which only came in last week. So this is a client, and so this is someone that 50 Blue have helped us do a social campaign, following people and key customers that we're looking at using the referral model and so on via LinkedIn. And this actually came in yesterday, and 50 Blue run my LinkedIn account. And this is from a client who actually just says to us, I'm not the right person, thanks for contacting, this is who you need to speak to. It works. You've just got to kind of follow it through, and it's not like it's a numbers game, right? You just got to keep it going. But we thought we'd throw these things as a live example for a large company that's come in like a few days ago.
Okay, so lastly, we'll start to wrap it up. Marketing is now a fundamental pillar of In2Events' business strategy. The decisions that they make are no longer reactive, but based on consideration, factual research, and this is now guiding everything in the business, from the services they offer to the staff that they need, to pricing, to supply chain. The list goes on. Make sure you have the right systems in place, though, to make this successful. As we touched on, we had to put in a CRM to enable some of the activity that we did. You need to have someone that's got an email service provider for you to send out those communications, whether that's personalised and individual or whether that's bulk. You need good project tools. You need good branding, etc. When we touch back on that marketing strategy piece, marketing strategy isn't something that you write and you put that down and then you never look at it again. Your marketing strategy is something that you need to revisit time and time again, whether that's quarterly or annually. You need to make sure that you're evolving that working document as your business evolves and grows and as the industry evolves and grows. And again, another analogy, this picture kind of demonstrates how the relationship between marketing and a business works. Gav is the MD of In2Events. He's effectively driving the In2Events vehicle. But without the knowledge and the understanding that the marketing function is bringing to him, he would be effectively driving blind. This might be slightly over the top, but this could be the result.
This isn't going to say this is going to happen if you don't do this, but... So this is basically Rich telling me if I don't listen to him again, this is what's going to happen and the vehicle's going to crash. So just finishing up here then, because we've got to go, but just to give you some key facts here quickly around, because we haven't talked about statistics, but since using 50 Blue, we have increased our profits by 88%. We have had a growth from a key account in 1 year of over 253%, 122% increase in all of our web traffic, and we've had an uplift of around about 89% conversion through our digital channels. Just some facts around his work. So we're going to end it there before everyone's eardrums explode and just leave you with some of the key takeaways from the session today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.